This video explores 15 jobs that have completely disappeared from modern Britain. If this brings back memories, please let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more nostalgic journeys through British history. 15 jobs that have completely disappeared from modern Britain, Part 1. There's something rather poignant about flicking through old British newspapers from the 1950s and 60s. The classified section tells stories of a working world that's vanished almost entirely. Jobs that once employed thousands across Britain have simply ceased to exist. Walk down any British high street today, and you'll struggle to find traces of occupations that were once utterly commonplace. These weren't obscure trades, mind you. These were proper jobs that paid mortgages and put food on tables across the country. Let's start with a profession that was absolutely vital until the 1970s, the knocker-upper. Now, you might think your alarm clock is annoying, but imagine having a person tap on your bedroom window at 5 in the morning. That was their entire job. Armed with long bamboo poles or pea shooters, knocker-uppers would patrol British streets in the pre-dawn darkness, rousing factory workers and mill hands. In the industrial towns of Lancashire and Yorkshire, you'd see Mary Smith of Brenton Street in East London, famous for using a pea shooter to ping dried peas at windows. She charged 6pence a week in the 1930s. The job only truly died out in the early 1970s, when affordable alarm clocks became universal in British homes. Then there were the lamplighters, those atmospheric figures you'd see at dusk throughout Britain's towns and cities. Every evening they'd walk their routes with long poles, lighting thousands of gas lamps. By morning, they'd reverse the process. London alone employed hundreds of lamplighters well into the 1960s. The last gas lamp in central London wasn't converted to electric until 1976. Moving indoors, let's talk about the telegram boy. Right up until 1982, when British Telecom discontinued the telegram service, these lads on bicycles were a common sight. They'd deliver those distinctive orange envelopes that meant important news, good or bad. During the war years, seeing a telegram boy approach your door could make your heart stop. The job paid around £12 a week in the 1970s. Boys as young as 15 could start, and they'd cycle miles each day, whatever the weather. Some telegram boys became local celebrities, knowing every street and shortcut in their patch. Department stores once employed entire teams of lift operators. These uniformed attendants would stand in their cages all day, announcing floors and operating the manual controls. Ladies' fashions, second floor, going up, became part of Britain's retail soundtrack. Selfridges in London had dozens of them. The job required surprising skill, actually. Getting the lift to stop level with each floor took practice. By the 1980s, automatic lifts had made them redundant, though Harrods kept a few for nostalgia's sake until the late 1990s. Here's one that might surprise you: bowling alley pinsetters. Before automated machinery arrived in the 1960s, young lads would sit behind the lanes, manually resetting pins after each bowl. It was hot, noisy work in the basements of places like the Stamford Hill Bowl in London. They'd earn maybe £2 for an evening shift in the early 1960s. British cinemas once employed armies of usherettes. These smart women in their distinctive uniforms would show you to your seat with a torch, sell ice creams from trays, and maintain order during performances. The Odeon chain alone employed thousands of them throughout the 1950s and 60s. They'd earn around £6 a week, plus tips if they were lucky. The job vanished gradually as multiplexes replaced traditional cinemas in the 1980s. Self-service and modern lighting made the role obsolete. Then we had the rag and bone men, clip-clopping through British streets on horse-drawn carts well into the 1970s. Any old iron became their famous cry. They'd collect scrap metal, old clothes, and broken furniture, paying pennies or swapping for things like goldfish or donkey stones. In working-class areas, The rag and bone man was a weekly fixture. Kids would save up junk just to get those treats. The last horse-drawn rag and bone rounds in London continued until about 1975, though a few determined souls carried on into the early 1980s. Coal delivery was another vanishing trade. The coalman would arrive in his lorry, hoist heavy sacks onto his back, and trudge through your house to pour coal into the bunker. By the 1960s, most earned around £15 a week. Their leather back protectors and blackened faces were part of British street life. Central heating killed this job more than anything else. In 1960, barely 10% of British homes had central heating. By 1985, it was over 60%. Coal fires became a lifestyle choice rather than a necessity. Let's not forget the humble door-to-door salesman, once a fixture of British suburban life. The Bedaware man, the Avon lady, the encyclopedia salesman, they'd knock on thousands of doors each week. Some became trusted figures in their communities, visiting the same houses for years. These weren't just sales jobs, really. They were social calls for many isolated housewives. A chat over tea whilst looking at cleaning products or cosmetics broke up long days at home. 15 jobs that have completely disappeared from modern Britain Part 2. Factory tea ladies deserve their moment in the spotlight because they were absolutely central to British industrial life. Every morning at 10:30 and afternoon at 3, you'd hear the rattle of their trolleys coming down the factory floor. The tea break wasn't just about the cuppa, though that cost you threepence in the 1960s. These women knew everyone's order by heart. 2 sugars for Fred in pressing, Milky for Susan on assembly. They'd navigate through machinery and noise, somehow never spilling a drop. The trolleys themselves were works of art, really. Chrome-plated urns keeping water boiling hot, compartments for biscuits, usually custard creams or bourbons. British Leyland's Longbridge plant in Birmingham employed over 30 tea ladies at its peak in the 1970s. They'd serve thousands of workers across multiple shifts. The job paid around £18 a week by then, which wasn't bad money. Vending machines started appearing in the late 1970s, but workers protested. They wanted their tea ladies back. The role combined catering with counseling, if we're honest. These women heard marriage troubles, money worries, and workplace grievances. They were confidants, agony aunts, and sometimes mediators in disputes. When factories closed or automated in the 1980s and 90s, the tea ladies vanished with them. Moving outside, let's talk about bus conductors, those chirpy figures in their peaked caps and coin-laden leather bags. Right up until the 1980s, most British buses had 2-person crews. The conductor would work their way through the crowded lower and upper decks, issuing tickets from those wonderful mechanical machines. London Transport employed thousands of them. The job paid around £25 a week in the mid-1970s. Hold very tight, please. They'd call out before ringing the bell twice to signal the driver. The banter was legendary. Good conductors knew their regular passengers, saved seats for elderly folk, and kept order amongst rowdy schoolkids. The Routemaster buses in London kept conductors going until 2005, long after they'd vanished elsewhere. Those final journeys were quite emotional, actually. People came out to ride the buses one last time, to hear that bell ring and get a proper ticket from a real conductor. Here's a job that younger people might not even recognize: the petrol pump attendant. Until the 1980s, you didn't pump your own fuel in Britain. You'd pull into a service station, and uniformed attendants would rush out to serve you. They'd fill your tank, check your oil, clean your windscreen, and check your tire pressures. Esso and Shell stations employed dozens of attendants at larger sites. The job paid around £30 a week by the late 1970s. It wasn't just about the petrol, though. These lads were trained mechanics who could spot problems. Your fan belt's looking dodgy, mate. Best get that sorted. Proper customer service, that was. Self-service arrived gradually through the 1970s, mainly to cut costs. By the mid-1980s, most stations had converted. You'll still find a few full-service stations in Britain today, mainly in remote areas, but they're rare as hen's teeth. The switchboard operator was another profession that employed thousands, particularly women. Every office, hotel, and hospital had a bank of switchboards. Operators would sit with their headsets, plugging cables into sockets to connect calls. "Putting you through now" became their signature phrase. GPO telephone exchanges employed over 15,000 switchboard operators in 1960. The job required quick thinking and a good memory. Operators would recognize regular callers by voice alone. They'd know who was away on holiday, who didn't want calls from particular people. They heard everything, frankly, but professional discretion was paramount. Automatic exchanges killed this job gradually from the 1960s onwards. Subscriber trunk dialing meant you could make long-distance calls without an operator. By the mid-1980s, most manual exchanges had closed. Some operators retrained as directory inquiry staff, but that's mostly automated now too. Let's not forget the milk delivery roundsman, though this one disappeared more recently than others. Until the 1990s, having your milk delivered was standard across Britain. You'd leave empties on the doorstep and find fresh ones there by breakfast. Express Dairies and Unigate employed thousands of milkmen across the country. They'd start their rounds at 3 or 4 in the morning, whatever the weather. The job paid reasonably well, around £200 a week by the late 1980s. Good milkmen knew their customers intimately. They'd leave extra on weekends, hold deliveries during holidays, and keep an eye on vulnerable elderly customers. Supermarkets offering cheap milk killed this trade more than anything else. Why pay delivery charges when you could buy milk for half the price at Tesco? By 2000, milk deliveries had dropped by 70%. A few services still operate today, but it's a shadow of what once was. The final job worth mentioning is the cinema projectionist, a skilled trade that's almost completely vanished. Every cinema had a projection booth with 1 or 2 trained projectionists. They'd thread film through complex machinery, change reels at precise moments, and fix breaks when film snapped. It was hot, technical work requiring real expertise. The Odeon Leicester Square in London had a team of 6 projectionists working shifts in the 1970s. They'd earn around £40 a week, good money for the time. The best projectionists took immense pride in their work. A smooth changeover between reels was an art form. Digital projection killed this craft almost overnight in the 2000s. Films now arrive on hard drives or via satellite. Any fool can press play, really. A century of accumulated knowledge and skill became obsolete in barely a decade. These weren't just jobs that disappeared. They were entire ways of life, communities of workers with their own cultures and traditions. Britain's economy has moved on, certainly, but something irreplaceable vanished with these occupations. The personal connections, the familiar faces, the human touch in everyday transactions. Progress has its price, and we've paid it in full.